A very good morning to all my dear friends. Today I will teach you the chapter A Type of Surgery for class 10. This is Devlok, Saraswati Vidya Mandir, Noida, TCT English. So dear students, this is the very first chapter of the Footprints Without Feet book, A Type of Surgery, written by James Harriet. So it's a very interesting story. So let us understand the story, what goes in the story. Tricky small dog is pampered and overfed by his rich mistress. Tricky is a dog here and he has a rich mistress. And Tricky is pampered means he is loved great. He is greatly loved by his mistress, right? He falls seriously ill and his mistress consults a veterinary surgeon. Do you know what is veterinary surgeon? Let me tell you. Veterinary surgeon is a surgeon who used to treat animals when they are having disease. Okay, now. So, does he perform an operation or does the dog recover? There are two questions. So, first question is, does he perform operations? So, means that when small Tricky goes to that hospital, to the doctor, so does he do any kind of operation? This is the first question. And second is, does the dog recover? So, after the treatment, does the dog becomes fit? Okay. Now, here are the three questions again. Let us see. Why Mrs. Swampre worried about Tricky? After reading all this part, we will be able to answer these questions. Right? Now read and find out. Why is Mrs. Swampre worried about Tricky? So, what does she do to help him? Is she wise in this? And the third question, who does I refer to in this story? All these things we shall be knowing after studying the text. Let us understand it. I was really worried about Tricky this time. I had pulled up my car when I saw him in the street when his mistress and I were shocked at his appearance. So here I refers to the narrator James Harriet right now. So he is a veterinary surgeon and when he saw Tricky moving in the streets with his mistress, he is worried. Why is he worried? Because of his appearance. He had become hugely fat like a bloated sausage with a leg at each corner. So the narrator refers Tricky here like a bloated sausage. And what it looks like with a leg at each corner. Right now, his eyes, bloodshot and rheumy, stared straight ahead and his tongue lolling from his jaws. So these are the symptoms, students, of an unhealthy animal. His eyes bloodshot means his eye was red and rheumy. Water was coming down. Right now, stared straight ahead. He was just looking forward and his tongue lolling from his jaws. Means his tongue was out. So all these symptoms show that he was unhealthy, right? All these things are being talked about that dog Tricky. Mrs. Swampre hastened to explain he was so listless, Mr. Harriet. He seemed to have no energy. I thought he must be suffering from malnutrition, so I have been giving him some little extras between meals to build him up, some malt and cold liver oil and a bowl of Horlicks at night to make him sleep. Nothing much really. So in spite of not been asked anything about his dog, about her dog, Mrs. Swampre hastens to explain. Means she is in hastens right now, and she is explaining that the dog is so listless, Mr. Harriet, that he seems to have no energy. Right? According to me, he is suffering from malnutrition, but the dog was not really, students. The dog was healthy enough. He was fat enough to survive, but instead of cutting his nutrients, instead of cutting his diet, she was supplying more diet to Tricky. Right now, she is saying that I have been giving him some little extras between meals. Means extra food she is providing to the dog. Right? Why? To build him up. Some malt and cold liver oil. These are the kind of food she is providing to that Tricky. Malt and cold liver oil and a bowl of Horlicks at night. Right now. So these are all the food items she is giving to Tricky. And all these things have led Tricky to become unhealthy, right now. And did you cut down on the sweet things as I told you? So the narrator, Mr. Harriet, asks her one question. What is that? Did you cut down on the sweet things? Means, have you avoided the sweet things like chocolates, Horlicks that you used to give to the dog? Oh, I did for a bit, but he seemed to be so weak I had to relent. Now she is answering that, yes, I did, but he turned into a weak animal. That's why I started giving him. Right now, he does love ice cream, cakes and chocolates, so on. Look at these two items. cream cakes and chocolates he had started to give Tricky. I can't bear to refuse him. I looked down again at the little dog. That was the trouble. Tricky's only fault was great. So this is a question and in the text, that what was the Tricky's only fault? That he was very greedy. Whatever was given to Tricky, he used to eat them all. Right now, he had never been known to refuse food. He would tackle a meal at any hour of the day or night. And I wondered about all the things Mrs. Fombury had not mentioned. Means the narrator is quite convinced that instead of giving so much food to Tricky, she is not telling him all those things. But the actually narrator is studying everything. Are you giving him plenty of exercise? Well, he has his little walks with me, as you can see, but Hoskin the gardener has been down with lumbago, so there has been no ring throwing lately. Another questions being asked by the narrator, Harriet, are you giving him plenty of exercise? Means, if you are giving so much nutritious food to the dog, so is he doing exercise on regular basis? She tells that, no, this time she says that the Hoskin, her gardener, is down with lumbago. Lumbago is a kind of disease associated with the bones, right now. So, that is in Hindi called Gathia Rog, right now. So, here she mentions that Hoskin is suffering with lumbago. So, right now, the dog is not going to do any kind of exercise, right, or the ring throwing lately. Now, next, you can see the two people doing conversation with each other regarding the dog, and the Tricky's mouth and his tongue is lolling down from his jaws, right? I tried to sound severe. Now I really mean this. If you don't cut his food right down and give him more exercise, he's going to be really ill. Now the narrator is turning into severe person. Strict here. Severe is strict. He is saying that I really mean this. That if you give him a lot of food only to eat, like the chocolates, ice cream cakes, Horlicks, malts, all these things, and no exercise, it will become ill. You must harden your heart and keep him on a very strict diet. So this is the, you can say, this is the advice given to Mrs. Fombury regarding her dog. That you must harden your heart and keep him on a very strict diet. Means you should supply very less food to Tricky. Mrs. Fombury wrung her hands. Oh, I will, Mr. Harriet. I am sure you are right, but it is so difficult, so very difficult. She set off way down along the road, as if determined to put the new regime into practice immediately. On hearing all these things, Mrs. Fombury does like this. She wrings her hand like this, okay? And she says that I will try my best to cut the food. But you know, it is very difficult, she tells, right? Now further, she sets off, head down along the road. Now she went away, and as if she is determined to put the new advice, new design into practice, right? I watched their progress with growing concern. Tricky was tottering along in his little tweed coat. He had a whole wardrobe of these coats for the cold weather and a raincoat for the wet days. Here, let me tell you that the narrator is watching their progress, how Tricky is going. Since he is a doctor now, he is trying to study all these things. How Tricky is moving, how he is progressing, right? And Mrs. Fombury is also is grown up with a growing concern. She is also looking a little worried. Tricky was tottering along his little tweed coat. So Tricky was wearing a little tweed coat, as you saw in the figure. You should see, this is little Tricky and wearing coat right now. He had a whole wardrobe of these coats. Means he was having a lot of coats since his mistress was rich enough to provide him all sorts of clothes, whether it is cold weather and raincoat or wet days, no matter, right now. So he had all kinds of clothes. He struggled on, drooping in his harness. Means he was not doing quite well when he was walking. He was looking restless. He was looking harnessed. Okay. I thought it would not be long before I heard from Mrs. Fombury. Means the narrator here tells that it was obvious that Tricky is going to be ill and is going to get a call from Mrs. Fombury regarding Tricky's illness in a very short time. Now, the unexpected call came within a few days. Mrs. Fombury was distraught. What happens here, dear students? That what the narrator was wishing just a day before, the expected call came to him. what it said, Tricky would eat nothing, refused even his favorite dishes, and besides he had bouts of vomiting. Spent all his time lying on a rug panting, did not want to go for walks, did not want to do anything. So when all these symptoms we see in these symptoms in any of our pet animals, we should also be careful. Tricky what was doing? He was neither eating anything, even his favorite dishes he did not want to eat. Besides this, he was having bouts of vomiting after vomiting, right now. And what happens next? He spent all his time lying on a rug panting. Means panting is just a symptom of showing tiredness, hardness, right now. He don't want to go for walks, even though he used to walk earlier, but now he is not preparing to go for walks. The only way was to get Tricky out of the house for a period. So here it is, all about this. I had made my plans in advance. The only way was to get Tricky out of the house for a period. The narrator, James Reid, is saying that he was already prepared with his plans, right now. What his plans were, what his plan was, his plan was to get Tricky out of the house for a period, right? So I suggested that he be hospitalized for about a fortnight to be kept under observations. So what he suggested to Mrs. Pumphrey, he suggested that Tricky should be hospitalized for how many days, dear students? Just for a fortnight. Fortnight means here 15 days, right now. The poor lady almost went. She was sure she would pine and die if he did not see her every day. Now she had a problem. She was very loving and affectionate to that Tricky. Now she was almost swooned. Means she had become, you can say, senseless after hearing all this, unconscious after hearing that she will be away from Tricky for a fortnight, right? She was sure she would pine and die if we don't see her every day. Means she was quite convinced that without her Tricky can't live. But she was wrong. But I took a firm line. Tricky was very ill and this was the only way to save him. In fact, I thought it best to take him without delay. And followed by Mrs. Pumphrey's Billings, I marched out into the car carrying the little dog wrapped in a blanket. But the narrator, dear students, just took a firm line. Means he was very strict to his advice that Tricky must be taken out of the home if he wants to recover from his illness. Right now, I marched out into the car carrying the little dog wrapped in the blanket. Means Tricky was in the blanket and the narrator was wrapping him in the blanket. The entire staff was roused and maids rushed in and out, bringing his bed, his night bed, favorite cushions, toys and rubber rings, breakfast bowl, lunch bowl, supper bowl, all these things. So there are so many things, students, that the staff of Mrs. Pumphrey was bringing for Tricky. The night bed, the day bed, favorite cushions like toys, rubber, rings, all these things. Along with these things, bowl, lunch bowl, supper bowl, all these things were the separate things for Tricky. Realizing that my car would never hold all this stuff, I started to drive away. As I moved off, Mrs. Pumphrey with a despairing cry threw an armful of the little coats through the window. I looked in the mirror before I turned the corner of the drive. Everybody was in tears. Here the narrator has shown a kind of exaggeration by saying that before his car could get filled with those stuffs, he started to drive away. And when he just looked back, Mrs. Pumphrey was wailing. She was in despairing cry. Not only she, but all the servants and all the staff were in tears, right? Out on the road, I glanced down at the pathetic little animal gasping on the seat by my side. Now when he was into the car and he was driving, he was looking at that animal, pathetic animal. Here pathetic means poor little animal that has come for Tricky. He was gasping on my seat by my side. He was taking just long breathing, right? I patted the head and Tricky made a brave effort to back his tail. So when you pat the head or something of an animal, it starts to bag his tail. So the dogs do also, Tricky did. Poor old lad, I said, you want a kick in you, but I think I know a cure for you. Then it is saying that, poor Tricky, you want a kick. Kick here is the energy. You don't have enough energy to get aroused. Right now, I think I know I care for you. Means the narrator is quite convinced that he will treat Tricky in a beautiful way and the time will come when he will be healthy. Right? So this was the first part, students. In the second part, I will explain to you the more things. Before we end the session, I must answer these three questions which was put earlier in the text. What the questions are? Why is Mrs. Pumphrey worried about Tricky? Mrs. Pomfrey was worried about Tricky because, according to her, Tricky had started to leave food. Even his favorite food was not liked by Tricky. He did not want to go for a walk. Right now, he just kept playing most of the time in his bed. Right? So this was the reason that Mrs. Pomfrey was worried about Tricky. Okay. Second is, what does she do to help him? It's she voice in this. What she does? She starts giving him food between the meals like Horlicks, malts, chocolates, all these things. But I don't think she was wise in this, because she was thinking that he was functioning with malnutrition, but actually Tricky was not. He needed to cut food supplies right now rather than giving extra foods. Who does I refer to the story? As I told you, I refers to the narrator, James Herriot. So thank you very much, students. So this is the end of the part first. In the next video, I will teach you part second. Thank you so much, dear students. Thank you.